Hey guys, what's up? It's Lizzy Jane. We have Vale joining me. She is quite an astounding woman who has really dipped her toes in so many facets of the entertainment and dance music industry. It was so lovely getting to sit down and talk with her. We've been planning this for quite some time. Vale is a highly explosive, dark, and mysterious byproduct of the many years of her experience and footing within electronic dance music. Her formerly known DJ project as spacegeishA, she toured the globe. She took everything she learned there, from psytrance to tech house to dubstep to everything in between, and refined that to create what is known currently as Vale. Visuals play a huge part of her project, which if you've seen her live, you definitely see that to be true. Her discography really falls between dubstep, drum and bass, halftime, and left field experimental bass. It's just a very cool endeavor that she's gone on, and I had no idea what her journey was before I sat down and spoke with her. So I'm really excited for you guys to hear everything. As always, if you are enjoying these episodes, please make sure you like, comment, subscribe to the YouTube channel, leave a review on Spotify podcast, leave a review on Apple podcast. It all helps more than you know. Let's hop into this. My name is Lizzy Jane. Let's hop into this. This is Lizzy Jane, and you are tuning into my podcast with special guest Vale. Hey guys, so lately I've seen a ton of larger shows I've been playing at that a lot of these festivals and venues are no longer allowing bags that are not clear. Well, guess what? Lunchbox Packs is coming in clutch again. They have just stepped up their anti-theft bags by releasing a fully clear hydration pack and snack pack. This is an absolute game changer for your summer festivals and events. Each bag is made out of TPU material that is incredibly durable, flexible, and made to not alter under extreme sun exposure over time. You also have the option to bring a skin in your bag on the way in, and once you're through that security line, you can zip on your skin for privacy of your belongings and to add some extra personalized fun flair. These hydration packs meet the majority of all festival regulations and guidelines. As always, these packs have all of the awesome anti-theft features as the original hydration and snack packs. Make sure you use code LizzyJane for $10 off any hydration pack and code LizzyJ for $5 off any snack pack. I will see you at the rave. The show today was brought to you by VitaPlur E-Boost Gum. With no pill to take or powders to mix, VitaPlur E-Boost Gum is a first-of-its-kind energy rave supplement that provides magnesium, electrolytes, and antioxidants while you chew. VitaPlur is the perfect complement to my active lifestyle, whether it's at the festival, on the road touring, or hitting the gym. Chew VitaPlur and dance with confidence. Use code LizzyJane for 10% off any order.
Becca,
Awesome.
thank you so much for joining me today.
Yeah, I'm so happy to be here.
Absolutely. I'm glad we finally got to make it happen. You've been running around everywhere like a wild woman.
Yes, absolutely.
And for those who are not maybe familiar with your project, you go by Vale. I've seen you come up over the years and really produce all of these different sounding subgenres within bass music, which I love. And you have such I was listening to your music on the way here. Such a grimy, deep overall sound, but then you're such a pleasant, lovely woman in front of me. It's just crazy how everybody's journey is so different.
Yes.
If you don't mind, give us a little bit of background on yourself, where you've come from. I know you've worked in totally different facets and kind of roles in music before kind of stepping into Vale. You always made music? Were you involved in music? And that was what made you want to start producing?
Yeah, so I'd love to deep dive a little bit. So my first official music industry job, if you will, was I accepted a job being the label manager for what is now my label, Street Ritual.
Okay.
Yeah, and that was way back in 2012. So I, for several years, ran the label pretty casually, and had another like partner involved at that time. He kind of fell off, and I decided like, okay, I'm gonna take, I'm gonna take ownership of the business, which I did,
Mhm.
and keep this moving forward. When I signed on to the label, we had 12 releases. We're about to hit our 200th, so that's
God.
happened in the last 11 years, which is crazy to think about. And at simultaneously, I was also working a lot of events, stage managing and doing AR. So events like Lightning in a Bottle, Burning Man, Symbiosis, Serenity Gathering, Lucidity. Yeah, a lot of the West Coast stuff because at the time I was living right outside of San Francisco.
Got it.
And then at Burning Man, my second year, I got to work with a club from San Francisco, and we got essentially a huge stage. And I was able to program 6 nights of music for 12 hours each night. And I decided to put myself on the opening slot of that stage because at that point I was like, there's a lot of my guy friends on this lineup. Like, I can do this, and I'm gonna go up there and just play all my label music. I quickly fell in love with the art of DJing, but I think at that point I realized I was already kind of a selector my whole life. Like, being a label manager, obviously you're selecting, not in a real time DJ scenario, but you still are. And going back all the way to when I was a kid and I played on a lot of sports teams and whatnot, I would always be like making the mixes for the pregame rituals. I actually DJ'd my high school dance with my gym teacher. So like I made a playlist and he put it on his computer. And so when I reflect back, I think, okay, I've always kind of liked to be in charge of the sound, if that makes sense. But that year at Burning Man, I think it was 2014, was the first time I was like, okay, I love this. It was just about learning kind of the nuances to doing it live. And then from there, it just exploded. My passion for it continued to grow. And I worked with a lot of the artists on my label, kind of early stage artist management and business management stuff, not kind of that at the level that I'm at now, but really early stage stuff like how do you get your project going? How do you make a logo? Basic stuff. So I have a lot of that background on like how to brand and grow projects and that kind of insight into the industry, which a lot of artists like don't come into this game with. So and my alias at the time, I decided to go by spacegeishA because that was actually a name given to me that year. It was my playa name. Do you know anything about Burning Man?
I'm about to go into Burning Man. 100%. Yes.
They give you a playa name. So my friend said, you're just running around all weekend taking care of everyone. So I was also stage managing, and he said, you're like a little space geisha. And I said, okay, great. My set's tonight. That'll be my name. Then I continued with that project. I had the pleasure of traveling abroad several times. I DJ'd festivals in Australia, Norway, Sweden, Portugal, all with kind of this more like psychedelic based sound, but integrating a lot of the, at that time, like deeper, heavy, slower psychedelic tempos that were coming out of America. So that was like the White Bear, Tribone, Sixes, which is all very, I would put kind of in a box with Tipper, if you will.
Got it.
So Tipper was kind of like the dad of that. But it's funny because a lot of times now I'll go to these huge EDM shows and people are like, you've ever seen Sudden Death? And I'm like, no, I was literally in Portugal for the whole summer. Like, I miss a lot of that early EDM phase because I was just kind of in a different, more like psychedelic world of music, if that makes sense. And then, as my interest grew with DJing, I got hungrier and hungrier to learn how to like make my own songs. And a lot of that comes from like wanting to curate a specific dance floor experience with being able to do that through my songs instead of like finding other songs. And then the pandemic hit. So I had already been like casually working on music prior to the pandemic hitting. And I decided, I have the next year at home. So I'm going to finish these tunes. I'm going to take lessons. I'm going to get way more serious about this. So through that, I also decided to rebrand to Veil. And for a lot of reasons, I think just my old project was, I played every genre of like psychedelic leaning bass music that you could, like psytrance, house, dubstep, some techno. So I really wanted to just tighten everything up and kind of I looked at it as spacegeishA was this big rainbow, and I really wanted to tighten things up into like 2 colors and a little bit more streamlined of a sound. And that happened around my 30th birthday. So I think also like going through all of my 20s working in music, it was a way to like redefine how I wanted to approach the future in music, and at a lot more like refined level. So I'm very grateful that the Veil project has been, able to do that, to help me through that, of kind of like the next phase of my passion for music and being able to put all that out. So
absolutely. I mean, what a journey, first off. Holy shit. And I think everybody has this journey on their way up. And so many of the women that I've sat down with, whether it's like, not necessarily having on the podcast, just having as friends or understanding their background, like Gabby 100 Drums is a good example. I mean, Maddie O'Neill, she's coming on next. Like all of these women kind of worked within this space, or they've just been doing it for so long to play in the jam bands and then kind of cross over to the CDM and then figure out exactly what they want to do. And I also think Peekaboo's the one who always comes to mind for me. The rebrand or the new project is kind of taking all of this experience and work thus far and applying that knowledge to something that, exactly what you said, is very streamlined, is very cohesive. You know what your vision is, you know the type of music you want to release. And I think a lot of like artists, and this has especially happened with me since I've been like Lizzy Jane since the beginning, you go through these periods of like times where like you really love making something, and then it's kind of like, well, wait, like I'm growing and I'm developing, and maybe this doesn't really accentuate what I'm great at anymore. And then you have to redirect, and whether that's through a rebrand or an album or an EP. I mean, you see it in pop music all the time. And I think hip hop and all of those guys. And I think it's something where in EDM, you're very often looked upon to fit into this bubble. And if you don't fit into the bubble, it's really hard for an agency or a label to really invest in you and say, okay, are you going to be bringing the same kind of scope to the page or to the table every time, where we can put you on a tour with Liquid Stranger and we know that people are going to follow you and you're going to keep developing and keep growing as an act, and you're not going to go like haywire to the left side and do something so different. And like, there's definitely like a love and hate in between that. And I think now more than ever, consumers and fans are just so much more invested and interested that they're a little bit more open to artists doing different things, which I love. And I always feel like the Wakan kind of deep family has always really put that on a pedestal to be like, quote unquote, okay for their artists to do different things. And then maybe it goes to like Martin's sub label. How do I pronounce it? Sasquan?
Sasquan.
Okay. I look at it all the time and in my head, I'm like, okay, like, is this like the Szechuan sauce or is this like Sasquan? But yeah, like I love that because it kind of shows that, people just have these interests. I don't think there's any one person I've met that's like, I want to listen to like headbanger dubstep every day, every minute until the day I die. Like people have different moods. People have different things to listen to. And I think as an artist, like you have that within yourself as well. Like making the same shit over and over again, starting with a 140 template, going into your catalog of sounds. It's cool, but like very often, the only times you're going to grow as an artist is when you do uncomfortable things and you kind of take yourself to that next level of exploration. And then you could end up like loving it. Yeah. And I guess coming out of like your first decade in music, how did you know that Veil was going to be this, slow, like wompy, experimental bass music, also paired with a little bit of drum and bass, a little bit of psychedelic bass, like what kind of made you make that decision to commit to that specifically?
That's a great question. So I know that prior to figuring out that my name was going to be Veil moving forward, I knew the way that the project was going to feel and look. It was very much like a feeling that I was holding on to. And I spent months, literally my best friends will tell you, going through every possible name you could ever imagine, like using, all different kinds of weird tactics to find new words and new spellings, and we really ran the gamut on options, I'd say. But like I said, the whole time I knew the feeling and the sound. And I think that over the years with spacegeishA, like I'm really influenced by like global sound. So not just like EDM, like what we call EDM here in America, but like psytrance. A lot of people don't realize this. Like psytrance dominates the electronic music community across the globe. Like you go to any other country and that is what's playing at main stage.
So crazy.
Yeah, and we don't get that here as much, but with psytrance at least, I take away like really heavy kicks, really heavy subs, really psychedelic moments, breakdowns, vocals and lyrics in the songs that actually have depth and meaning besides just like a ball or whatever. Which I do too, don't get me wrong, but I knew I wanted to take that heaviness from what I got from psytrance and more mid-tempo, like our style psychedelic-based music and apply it to like what I heard thus far in EDM, which was a lot of just heavy, heavy, heavy. So I wanted to kind of ride that line of like creating really heavy music that also has that like nuance of psychedelia, like a kind of this elusive feeling, a little bit scary, a little bit sexy, and kind of put it into a live experience that runs the, I just said this, but runs the gamut of all the genres. I knew I wanted to be multi-genred, but I also knew that. So when I do my selecting, like I listen to songs that for me still fit in the Veil bubble, but I like my favorite thing to do, and I think the most important part of it is being able to get on the edge of that bubble, like you were saying before, and kind of ride that line of like take genre risks. At the time, I had no, like, if you would have told me then that like you're gonna open on Subtronics tour or BTSM tour or something, I would have been like, oh, you're silly. Like I didn't have these like huge goals of being able to reach that wide with the sound, but as soon as I started the project and saw kind of like the impact I was having in my sets, it hit me that like, even artists like Subtronics who plays, predominantly like rhythm, like this experience still resonates with them and it will resonate with their crowds.
Yes.
So that this year particularly has been a big learning lesson in that of like playing to new crowds that are used to one thing and getting them to trust you and then kind of going from there.
And it's like so often it's kind of like that rope of pulling somebody in with things that they know and maybe they love, or maybe edits in certain songs that they're familiar with, and then doing your bootleg or doing your flip, and then opening this like new journey within your set to things that like I always have been told, and I always hear kind of DJs give people what they don't know they necessarily want, but they do want it like subconsciously kind of deal, or they're ready to take that step and hear new things. And I'll always commend, Jesse and Sonia and the Black Tiger Sex Machine guys. Like people are ready to not hear the same shit for 6 hours. And I still think that maybe that hasn't hit necessarily like the niche dubstep scene, because there definitely are fans that can do that for 12 hours and love it.
Right.
But I just feel like, at a venue like Red Rocks or a venue like Mission, or at most festivals that we see now, it's just not the same shit one after another, after another, after another. And there's so many individuals that are aspiring to do this, and people who make great music who, for some reason or another, maybe don't play shows or haven't made, taken that step yet, that are just making some crazy stuff.
Yeah.
And I know it's kind of hard from a talent buyer situation. And sometimes, especially with, festival like Gold Rush or festival like EDC, where you want to play the safe bets and you want to, make sure that you're bringing in people that everybody knows and loves, like Subtronics, like San Holo, like Black Tiger Sex Machine. But then the undercard is where you can kind of take those kind of gambits and gambles and roll the dice and say, all right, what they're doing is cool and unique. And I just feel like the name of the game, especially in our like generation of artists, is how can you take what you're doing, hone your craft, hone your skill, and then be unique and like be yourself. And like when you hear that song come on a playlist mix, you go, oh, that's Vale. Or when you have a live show, you know the vibe and the feeling and the emotion it's going to omit. But that takes a long time as an artist to develop. And oftentimes it is very much so like a team is somewhat behind that, helping orchestrate the creative direction or the this or the that. Did you have some people in your corner in the midst of all of this saying, okay, this is what's coming to mind, this is what's doing this? Or was this very much so a clear vision of yours that has been kind of like executed since day one?
That's a great question. So there's kind of two sides of it from love that. Love that. Okay. So yeah, there's kind of two sides to it. I'd say, first of all, my creative director, he goes by 5'9".
Okay.
And him and I actually, my first burn, my second burn, and not my most recent one, but we worked on those stages together, and we're Bay Area kids that were going to like wormhole events. And I knew him. At that time, he was doing more stage design, CNC cutting, building insane pieces of art to go on stages that light up and all this
Crazy installations.
Yeah.
Got it.
Like very like hands-on wood projects. And then when I started like branding and getting merch done for my spacegeishA project, Joshi was the one he developed all the digital art for it, and we translated a lot of that art to merch, right? So him getting involved was kind of just an organic thing. We're good friends. We collaborate well. Our styles are similar. And he's going to help me on spacegeishA. So he did all my design for that project. So when I was rebranding to Vale, I remember definitely having a moment of like a lot of people did, like, are you sure? Like, are you sure you're going to do that? And once I kind of told him the inspiration and the vibe that I had been like curating in my head, he was on board. Let's do this. He then taught himself how to VJ, and animate and do all these other things. So flash forward to now, he does all my animations, like all of my art still, all of the merch, but really has a huge hand in helping me execute the vision, because I'll come to him and say, okay, look, here's 3 tracks. This is like for my last EP, Surveillance. Like, this is what I'm feeling. I'm feeling like there's a woman and she's on a mission and she's trapped in a server and she's trying to like dismantle the patriarchy through defeating all these server bosses, like somewhere in the ethers that we can't even comprehend as humans. And he's like, great, bet, let's do it. So then we kind of like get together and we then film a lot of like live clips and shots of short ones and longer ones of that scene. So we spent like 2 days turning my old attic into a hacker den and had like screens everywhere and whatnot. So that vision very much is like comes from my brain, and then he helps translate it and make it real. So I don't think the Vale project it wouldn't look or feel anything like it does without Joshi, who's 5'9". So he's definitely been an integral part of like helping that vision come to life.
Absolutely.
And then the other side of things, I had with spacegeishA. So I also knew Liquid Stranger Martin. I booked him at my Burning Man stages in 2013 and 14. He gave me a little bandana. I still have it.
Wow.
Back then, he was playing like a lot more deep psychedelic, down-tempo, mid-tempo stuff. So I always kind of knew him. He knew of me. We weren't like super close or anything. But when I actually like submitted a mix to, it was He Who Must Not Be Named festival.
Yeah.
And I won the mix contest to play at that event. It was in Cancun. I don't even honestly remember what it was called. And at that point, I had reached out to Loper, who's, runs Wakan and manages Martin and everything. And I said, said, I know, like, this is my sound. You guys want to get involved? And he's like very interested.
Be the fitting person.
Yeah, like he's down is the message. So it was very hard to then a month or two later say, hey, so I know I have all this music I'm going to send you, but actually I'm rebranding, and that was a huge risk in itself. I was like, if they're not down, I'm doing it anyway, whatever.
Yeah.
But he was all about it, here for it, like stoked to put out the
That's how you
EP.
know.
Yeah.
And it's so often about like the individual and their work ethic and like, okay, if you want this and you're going to bring this to life and you have the team behind you, do it, run it. Because it's like, that's what you're going to be most passionate about. So you're going to be most invested.
Exactly. And he was, I think they was kind of impressed with all the aspects that I had considered down to like the branding, the merch designs, every little nuanced thing, like even the messaging and how everything comes across. So, but yeah, I've always been kind of like a spearheader, if you will, on the project. Like I've had both of my managers from the past tell me that I know what I want and I'm going to do it. And having all that support along the way has only helped to propel it. So it's definitely like all come from my brain. Which is, like you said in the beginning, it's funny because I'm generally a very happy, positive, cheerful person. But if you just like look at my Instagram, you're like, oh my God, like what? Like after my concert, someone said, who are you so angry at? Like, and I had a girl actually come up to me and say, or, we're chatting and I tell her I'm playing a set later. And she said, oh, you're Vale. I can't come to your set because I don't like scary movies, was what she said. And then like we're chatting for a while. She goes, you know what? But you're so friendly and bubbly and nice. So I think I'm going to come anyway, And then the next day I saw her and she was like, I loved your set. But so I don't know. I think that's just the way I express a lot of those feelings.
Yeah.
Through my art.
It's like this alter ego almost. Like, do you feel it's that way when you kind of like, because I feel like I see obviously way more than two different types of artists, but I see artists who are very much so their project and there's not much in between. Like the person that you meet off stage is very much so going to be the personality that you see on stage. And then you have people who they're just polar opposites. And it's almost like this Hannah Montana type of deal.
Yeah.
Where like it's this different personality and almost this like theatrical character that you're stepping into when you perform.
That's an interesting thing that I've never considered, but I think it's a little bit of both. Like I don't feel like I'm stepping in to be Vale. I very much feel like Vale, like in my everyday life on a lot of ways, but I think that's just how I see the world and my general like style and aesthetic around my house. And like if you walk in my studio, you're like, okay, this is a Vale studio. So it's like that is the feeling and the vibe that inspires me. So I do think it's like taking the best parts of my, not the best parts, but let's say the darkest and the scariest and, the refined parts of my personality and like channeling them into angry bass music. Like I just got a lot of energy and I got a lot of like, I got to put it somewhere. So bass music has been like the most relieving thing for that out of anything. Like performing a set for me is super cathartic and not just like as a persona, like it genuinely helps my life feel better and feel like I'm putting good energy out there. So I think it's a little bit of both, but I do think that if you were to just kind of stumble across me and my branding, you might not realize like that I'm a really friendly, bubbly, happy person.
Yeah.
So I think it's a little bit of both because on stage I am usually angry. Not actually angry. I'm like angry at how good everything sounds and how happy I am. I'm like, oh, you just can't get enough of it. But that comes across as like angry a lot of the time.
Absolutely. And I feel like for people who don't like have the time to actually meet you, there's so many women artists that Jeannie's like a great example. Like I think of so many like just heavy acts like Jessica Odford, like those individuals where, I mean, for every like 10 women I meet, 9 or like 9 out of 10 are like the nicest, most friendly individuals, period.
Like
it's just such like a cool community to be in as a woman. But then it's almost, to me, it's kind of like how important it is to have a creative outlet, whether you make it your career and your end all be all, or it's something that you do at home behind closed doors and nobody sees it, because it allows you it's like an analogy for like going to the gym or doing
Right.
something that's like hugely an energy expenditure that is getting all of your pent up energy, your angry energy, your happy energy out in one kind of like cumulative art form or effort towards something.
Right.
And that's what I feel like being like an artist is. And like when we step on stage like so often, and I'm curious if you like, do you plan your sets or are you kind of still like, I'm putting everything together, I'm going to read the room? Because I can definitely tell like you being like a selector, like you having just the DJ background in you, and met people who still do the playlist thing. They go up there and they say, okay, I know what my intro is going to be and I know the kind of vibe and journey I'm going to take somebody on. And then if maybe the crowd isn't feeling it, I can dip into something else. I am not one of those individuals. I think I'd have a panic attack on stage, but I know people who like really have honed that craft can do it like the back of your hand.
Yeah, so I actually get asked this question a lot, and I do a pre-plan, if that makes sense, and then I DJ live, so I don't know what I'm actually going to plan. And when I say pre-plan, I mean I usually develop a crate. Like, let's say I have an hour set, I might put 100 songs in the crate.
Okay.
Maybe 60 of them came over from my last crate. They're songs that I've been rinsing the last couple of weeks. And then for every gig, I'm always trying to like sub in another 20, 40 like brand new things. Plus like obviously new whips and IDs from me and friends and whatnot. And then I group them by BPM, and then in the BPM, I group them by style. So in my crate, it'll be like really deep dubstep in the beginning, then maybe more wonky dubstep. Then maybe I have a 120 section with like 10 tunes. Then I have like a 150 section, 160. Then I have my drum and bass section. And I usually like at the end then put a lot of kind of just other outlier tracks that are good for like closing sets, if that makes sense. And then from that 100, I freeform DJ all of that by reading the crowd.
Got it.
It's funny because I have like a lot of anxiety and I plan everything in my life. I'm a hyper planner. So the fact that I don't plan my DJ sets is really off brand for my anxiety. Yeah. But it in some way, and I've tried to like express this to people, like planning the sets almost gives me more anxiety because I don't feel like I have the ability to pivot if need be.
Yeah.
And I think that when you're in old parts of my career, like when I was Space geishA or even beginning Veil sets, like that was less important to me because I was playing very familiar, safe events. Whereas like this year, and last year, I'm playing huge events with
like the commercialized circuit.
Yes, exactly. So a much larger scope. And I feel way more in control when I have the ability to pivot when needed, like you said. So, okay, the drum and bass is not hitting tonight. Let's get out of it a little faster, or wow, they're loving the drum and bass right now. Energies are peak. I'm going to keep ripping them. And then from there, like, let's say I decide I'm now going to end the set with this. I might like go into another crate, like Red Rock's crate from a few months ago, and check the D&B tracks in there and maybe pull one or two from there. So it's still very much like I can reference old songs. It's not like I'm limiting myself to that crate, but that crate gives me a roadmap, if you will. But I come from a very strong DJ background. When I learned to DJ and was starting to play my first Space geishA gigs, I did plan a few sets, and I swear to you, I messed up more trying to follow my plan.
Yeah.
And was like, I can't do this. Like, I need to really be able to just make a left or right turn.
Everyone is so different too. Yeah. Like I definitely like, and do you like set cue points and stuff too? Or do you like just really, I guess you would still obviously really need to know your music. But for me, it's like pilot control. Like I want to be able to be backwards looking up and say A, B, A, B, A, B.
Right.
Maybe C and D for certain loops if I'm like doing a drum and bass section, or if I'm going more into a little bit more bass house kind of deal. But yeah, like do you kind of run off of those cue points? You're like, no, I know exactly where I'm going.
No, so I use the key points I think a little differently, but I usually mark like B at the drop.
Yep.
And then I do a 16 bar, 32 bar, and 64 bar cue points before the drop.
Got it.
And then I usually put another one at the beginning of the breakdown and then another one at the beginning of the second drop.
Mm-hmm.
So what that does for me is as I'm playing live, like because this isn't planned, right? So I'm like, ooh, I'm going to play this track and ooh, this double's sounding good. And I'm listening to it in my headphones. Now all of a sudden the double doesn't sound good. I can just go back on my cue point to the beginning of the song. So I use then the cue points as like a roadmap in the song.
Yeah.
Where I'm like, ooh, I actually want to drop this fast now. I want to do a quick drop and like no breakdown at all. It's like, oh, I got 16, boom, 16 bars. It's going to drop. So I kind of have those to help me DJ on the fly better, if that makes sense.
No, absolutely. It's very much similar to like adding, do you work in Ableton?
Yes.
It's like adding locators in Ableton, like based on like the structure of the song, like build, what you said, build, break, intro, part 1A, 1B, 2A, 2B of each drop. And then, because that's, I want to get better with it for sure. It's definitely like if I do a live element or if I do singing, it's way more planned than if I'm just DJing.
That makes sense.
But I want to be able to be, the stuff with the doubles, and then especially like in this kind of new drum and bass era that is finally, and it's not new in the States. I just think it's new commercially being very supported. When I saw, what was it, Rampage is doing finally an event in the States.
Yeah.
When I saw that, I was like, all right, it's time.
Yeah.
Like, it's time. If they're coming over here, we're here.
We're Insomniacs, predominantly drum and bass festival.
Yeah. And it's cool. I mean, I think it's the more people that know about it. I mean, it's not going to be everybody's cup of tea, but I definitely think like just as dubstep came up, just as experimental bass came up, like it's more space for everybody to have such diversity within electronic dance music, which is always so exciting. And I guess keep going back to like Burning Man. I have not had the pleasure of going yet. I think it was a lot more difficult for us to justify coming from Florida because it's so far.
Right.
But out here, like I live down the street from Beacon, which is a Burning Man bar. I've met so many people who have their own carts and their own crews, and it makes it kind of an easy transition if and when you wanted to partake. But like, tell me about, I guess, your experience of Burning Man over the years. Everyone I've talked to really does say it's been like a staple in their life, whether it's an artist or somebody who works in music or nobody who works in music, and it's, they do their own thing and they go to Burning Man every single fucking year.
Right. It's, I mean, honestly, a magical place that is hard to describe in words. It's like, if you're at a festival and you walk around and you see like, what did I see at WCON? A guy had like a mini, I forget what it's called when you try to get the stuffed animals with the claw.
Oh, like the games that you would play,
like it's
right?
Arcade.
Yeah.
I had one on the ground at WCON that was mini, and I was like, wow, that's some Burning Man shit right there. Because like just some highlights. Like I was in a dust storm in deep playa, and you're stuck there. You can't go anywhere for hours because you don't want to get hit by an art car. And this van rolls up and they open the side of their door and they give us Alaskan tuna, like off on ice, like just some crazy things that you're like, did that actually just happen? Like, and I think that it's like the energy and the effort of everyone there to create the weird fucking place that it is, really is special to me. But my first 2 years going, I went for 14 days and worked on the stages. So 14 days on playa means like 21 days by the time you're getting there. And I was in the Bay Area. In the Bay Area, it's like more of a norm because it's right there.
It's like what, 12, 15 hours? Longer than.
So yeah, it's about 12 hours. But with, my first year going, we drove in my Subaru and towed a trailer. The trailer broke down. It took us like 30 hours to get there, even though we were like 12 hours away.
Close.
So it's still like always a journey. But I think for me, my first 2 years going, I was just so exhausted from being there. Like by the time the party actually started,
you're like ready to go.
I had already lost my voice twice. Like gotten it back twice. Like, so then my third year going was in 2016, and I decided I'm not doing anything but playing sets, which in my mind I thought, okay, I'm not going to work very hard. I was wrong. I played 11 sets. I was running around the playa all the time trying to like get to the sets or, find the art car or get ready for a set or whatever it was. So like all my Burning Man experiences have been very like, I'm working very hard. But then when I reflect on what other people experience there is like, it's not a fact. You have to like to work hard to go there.
I've heard it's just the biggest effort and investment. Like, do not go to Burning Man if you think it's going to be like just the videos you see online and just a ride in the sun and you're there and then all of your shit's there. Like, no, like I just every single person I've talked to has said there's a journey in itself just to get there.
Right.
And then once you get there, you literally have to like build your like compound and make sure everything is sourced and make sure everything's taken care of in case of like a weather emergency or in case of whatever. And then you don't even realize how big fucking place is.
Yeah, that city.
You're not even going to see it in the week time span or 2 week time span that you're actually there.
Yeah.
God.
No, it's definitely like you have to be slightly psychotic and like to put yourself in hard situations and want to be able to survive on your own. But I will say, like, I feel more equipped as a human after living in the desert 3 separate times for 2 weeks, having to like do everything for myself. Like, it gives you this kind of like assuredness of like, okay, I can handle a lot.
Yeah.
You know, I can handle a lot. I can handle. So for me, it was just growth in those ways and just also opening my mind to like the culture outside of just EDM or bass music or psytrance, whatever it is. Like there is a larger culture that we're a part of, which is just being free, being open-minded, art being a heavy leading indicator of that world. And the art there is just, I mean, it's out of this world, you know? So it's definitely something I would recommend anybody should go to. I hear you on like, it's way easier to go when you're closer. You know? And I will be hopefully going back next year. I feel like I
have this itch in my body that I'm like, ooh, is like next year it? Like, do you mark it off your calendar? Like, do you like fully commit? Like, I had friends who like are like, we have like, you do the application thing and then the camp opening, but like you can pay for like, you know, it's like $700 or $800 and it like has your ticket, but it also has like your water and just stuff that like as a regular civilian in our day and age, you're not thinking about that you have to fucking have every day to survive.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I'm just like itching to play music there again. Like,
is the music just like fun? Like, obviously you see like the big things, you know, the Diplo, the this, the that, but like, is it just people just like want to dance? Like, can you play whatever the fuck you want? Like, how do those sets like become orchestrated?
So it's kind of like, who do you know to get sets there?
Yeah.
You know, like for example, Camp Q, they're the biggest bass music.
Yeah.
You know, and they have an insane lineup. Like I know a guy who knows a guy who can get me on that lineup. Great. It's all kind of like a free for all though. Like you might show up to see Diplo and he's nowhere to be found. Like it's not like a festival where things are like.
No, there's not like a schedule. I'm not like pulling up.
There is a schedule, but it's taken, I think, with a grain of salt.
Got it.
For everyone.
Yeah.
Because crazy things happen out there, right? But
no,
I'm interested to see, like, I think for Vale, at least on the playa next year, like I'll play things that you wouldn't find me playing anywhere else. You know, just for vibes. And it's like, cool, the big bass stage, I'm gonna play some angry bass music for sure. But there'll be a lot of other like art cars and whatnot where like I would love to do an all drum and bass set. Like I did an all psytrance set at my last burn, and it's like one of my biggest mixes on SoundCloud, ironically.
Really?
Yeah, I'll have to send it to you.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, so like I just think I was really glad I hit record on that one. But I just think you can kind of just do whatever you want, like have fun and people vibe with it.
Yeah.
You know, and that's freeing for an artist as well.
Absolutely.
Itself, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. Because again, it's, you know, once you kind of make that transition out of being a whatever you want to be, play your type of vibe, kind of DJ or actor, artist, you definitely like when you get booked as Vale at Wakan or when you get booked as Vale here, people are like, I'm going to hear Vale's music. This is going to have a Vale type of vibe. And it's hard to say, well, you know what? I'm feeling like progressive house.
Yeah.
It's just not going to happen.
Yeah.
I mean, I definitely have heard so much. And overall, I've just heard it's just such like a not like a life-changing experience, but it just teaches you so much about yourself. And you come out of it with like very much so like a processed kind of thinking of how to maybe approach certain things that you didn't know how to approach previously.
Right.
And in addition to that, it's like, especially with Burning Man being now in 2023, not necessarily what it was in 2012, you know, you have these people who are kind of like, oh, it's where all these celebrities go and it's where all this happens and da-da-da. But it's really about art, first off, like the art installations and like the camps and doing like the actual burn that happens on that Saturday. And like everybody says, if you go, you have to partake in the burn. You have to, you know, take the time to go and do these certain like events and celebrations that are what this is all really about. And it's so crazy, like not experiencing it myself, but I'm sure in your mind, like seeing the duality between like that and your average like commercialized EDM festival, and it just being so different. And I guess with your just experience overseas to now what electronic dance music has become in the stateside, is it just so different? Or is it, you know, there's certain things that are very similar and then there's certain things within those cultures that are just different as it would be going to visit somewhere overseas?
I think the sentiments are the same.
Okay.
Like we're gathering for joyous purposes, for peace, for music, for community, for acceptance, right? But it feels very different. Like the largest festival I went to over there was in Portugal. It's called Boom Festival.
Okay, I've heard of
Happens
it.
every other year. They actually have global music. So one of their stages is all dubstep. I saw Mala there. I saw Koki there. I saw
The OGs.
Sepia,
Yeah.
Kanji or Kongi. I never know how to say that right. But like the craziest dubstep, like from
Like real dubs, like
Yeah.
OG dubstep.
yes. So Boom is very much, they have every genre, but the main stage, which holds 60,000 people, is Psytrance. I did see Ott play at that stage.
Yep.
And that was just an out of this world experience. But being at that festival, like there was several times where I was like walking around with it was like Android Jones's crew was there doing visuals.
All
and
the
then,
Tiffer people.
yeah, like it was very much like you find these people from the US and then you're like best friends all weekend because you're like,
This
just
is
there.
us.
It's
Yeah.
actually where I met 100 Drums as well.
Oh,
was on the dance
really?
floor
Okay.
in Portugal. That was 2012 was my first year going, so that was way back in 2012. But yeah, like you're like, wow, we're the Americans here. Like there is a nuanced difference for sure. I think in Psytrance culture globally, like first of all, people don't wear shoes. It's like a thing where you're like connecting with the ground, through yourselves into the sky, whatever. So like people don't wear shoes. So it's like our American crew is like, you know, I'm not taking my boots off for anything and no one. So you know, and then there's just a little bit like, I hate to say it, but a little bit less ego around
Materialistic
what people
items
are wearing and what people are, you know, who's doing what. Like it's very like a psychedelic gathering.
Yeah.
You know? And that was what I took away from it, was like everything in Europe is very like cerebral, right? It's all trance. All the energy is like up here. Whereas in America, we're like bass music. It's really like, you know, like lower sacral energy. And we're like thrusting our hips. And one is not like better than the other, worse than the other, but that in itself creates this different energy.
Different
So I wouldn't trade those experiences for the world, because Vail wouldn't be like what it was today without
so much
having
experience.
that, you know, having that influence.
Absolutely. I jumped into like this whole deal, like not young, but like when you're 19, you feel like you're old, but you're really not old. And then you kind of grow up and you're like, wow, like there's so much to take away from so many different aspects. Like my first Tipper and Friends, totally eye-opening experience.
Yeah.
Coming from someone who had done the SMFs and the EDCs, and you're like, oh, Tipper.
Yeah.
Like that's where I saw
different.
Ott for the first time. And you experienced the Android Jones, the he does that like not tent, but like the overhead deal where he does his whole experience, and you go in and you lay down, and there's so many different facets underneath this like large umbrella of electronic music. And yeah, I didn't do a lot of festivals this year like I did last year, and Gold Rush is like my only, I would say, like very mainstream EDM fest. I'm about to yank this off. Unreal. And I sometimes feel like I'm obviously not too old to partake, but I always forget about the outfits and the whole, like, we're here and we're on a racetrack and like it's the bedazzled and the this and the that and the glasses and then you go to somewhere where like now is way more my cup of tea, like even a Red Rocks. And that's my biggest difference that I noticed moving up here. Yeah, I get it. It's not as hot and humid as Florida, but I think everybody likes to be naked in Florida.
Yeah.
So, and up here, it was just kind of like, wow, like I can go to a show or I could go here and like, you know, not really like have to put on this big outfit to not be looked at like you're a bum on the side of the road, you know? Everybody just kind of does their own thing. And it's more so really for the music and the culture and like what you're doing, just like coming up here and understanding that psychedelics are way more accepted than, you know, being in Florida where it's really like cocaine and liquor. Like it's just the difference. It's the Miami crowd versus the Denver crowd and how opposite and polar opposite can you really get. And I obviously like it here way better. I don't think I'm ever going to go back to Florida, but it just shows just like people are so different and cultures are so different, even within the US where, you know, as an artist, like you have your primary demographic markets that like fuck with Vail. And then you probably have places you go where you're like, okay, I'm still trying to build here, but like maybe what they like isn't necessarily like my cup of tea kind of deal.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think there's micro pockets throughout the USA and like it can feel very similar in a lot of different places that you go. But I'm also new to Denver, you know, so even though it's kind of been like a second home-ish for me for many years.
In my mind, I feel like you've been here for like 10 years.
That's what literally everyone says. Like they're like, you moved
like
to
Vail, Denver.
Yeah,
like, cool.
I moved to Denver and everyone's like, you didn't live already. But no, I was at like one of my best friends from home growing up lives here with her husband, and first place I ever tried psychedelics was here on a mountain called Montezuma. Where Bob Dylan recorded his one of his albums, and there's like no electricity, you know, 20 people. It was like or 20 houses or whatever, but it was a July 4th Montezuma party, and I had just never in my New Jersey life seen anything like what was going on that mountain that night. Like foosball tables getting lit on fire and fireworks, and like I was like, whoa. So my friends moving here when I still lived in Jersey really also opened my eyes to that, and they were up in Keystone.
Okay,
so we were doing a
one
lot
of my
more
favorite
like,
spots.
they were doing. We were doing all that like Gaper, you know, Colorado stuff.
Yeah, you're out there.
Yeah,
I mean, I think that's the beautiful thing about Colorado is, and I always have friends who visit here, and they're like, you know, I think Colorado is really like Denver is really a place that you have to know where you're going. You can't just like walk down and be like, oh, here's this and here's this, and everything's shiny and bright and the lights are everywhere like New York or like Miami or Chicago. You have to like really be educated on how to either like Google search and read Google reviews or like have friends who live here and stuff. And I think when people come here and they know people who live here to show them what's up, they're like blown away by it.
Right.
And it's only one facet. Like when I moved out here, it was because I couldn't live in Florida anymore, but it was not for music. It coincidentally, universe was like, you don't have a manager right now. Cool. Da 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 da. I had some meetings with someone. Then I found out they lived in Denver. I was like, cool. That's fucking awesome that this worked out. But in my head, it wasn't like, wow, Denver has this crazy music scene. It was like, okay, the summers are going to be kind of dead. You'll have Red Rocks, which is going to be super cool. And then like, you're really going there to get away from this hot and humid climate and like be up in the mountains and like have that duality of nature. And then I moved here and I was like, holy shit. I was like, this shit's wild. Like the summers here are crazy. The spring and the fall, crazy. And then on top of that, you have the option to drive 45 minutes in any direction, north or northwest or southwest. And you're just like in this serene, beautiful atmosphere that in my personal experience has like really helped like my creative inspiration. Being able to say, okay, we're all coming together. Everybody put $100 down. We're getting a house in the mountains for a week and we're going to go up and we're going to write, or we're going to go and we're going to wake up at 6 a.m. and we're going to go and make a snowboard day and be back in Denver by 2. Like there's just not many other places in the United States that you can really do that.
Right. No, I totally agree. My joke since moving here has been that it's the craziest festival I've ever been to. You know, it's
That's why a festival can't survive.
Yeah,
because it's festival all the time.
Yeah, exactly. It's like one weekend you're like, okay, no, I'm not going to the stage this weekend. I'm going to the mountain stage. I'm taking the day off. You know,
That's
it's
so
like going to
good.
the river for a day at a festival. Like, but it's for me, it's also just the amount of like inspiring acts that I have access to.
Yep.
Like here is overwhelming, you know, and moving in the beginning, you're like, I gotta go to it all. And I definitely did that. And I've had to learn very much like I can't see every set I want to see
No,
because
you
I'm
can't.
very much like a music rat. Like someone's here, I want to see them.
You'll
you know?
be out every single night for the rest of your life.
Like the amount of UK artists that came this summer that I had to I just did. But you know, I'd go see the select ones, but like the weeklies and all this stuff, like I couldn't keep up. So it's been overwhelmingly inspiring to be here. And, you know, it's the hub of bass music. Like I'd say most artists, probably 99% of them will say Denver's their favorite market, you know, to play. And there's a reason for that.
Yes.
The vibes are here. So,
vibes are here, the artists are here. Like it definitely says something when like, I feel like a copious amount of people move here from LA because LA is maybe not the right spot for them. Like it's just this very, you know, I still feel like we're maybe ahead of the curve, maybe not, but I just feel like it's just going to get so much bigger. I still feel like there's so much expenditure for like this whole market to grow, and everybody's just kind of like pushing the envelope. It's kind of like with technology. I'm a Joe Rogan fiend rat, and I listened to like all of his episodes and all of his podcasts, and he had some guy on. They were talking about like the development of AI and the development of technology and all of this shit. And the guy's like, well, I just don't feel like the younger millennial generation is being like, how far can we push the envelope? How far can we do this? But that's how I feel like the people who work in music here are. They're like, what new venue can I open? What new act can I bring? What new act can I develop and break and da-da-da-da, you know, now if let's do a venue in it here, let's do a venue in a new warehouse venue, cool. Let's do the underground, the renegades, da-da-da-da. And it's like people are just so ambitious. And I think there's so much also like competition within different promotion groups that I look at it like restaurants here where like, if you're not good and you're not unique, like you're not going to survive, where they've all found their niche, whether it's at Black Box or it's at Serves or it's all of the AEG venues, they all kind of do their own thing. And even as an artist too, like I've forever heard the statement, you know, before your first headline here, like you got to know you have a fan base. You got to know you have a market because you're never going to be the only one playing that night. Right. Coming somewhere from Tampa where it's like you had Ritz and now you have TK, which is super awesome. We've never had that. I think since the existence of the music scene there, but it would be like you have one artist coming in. If you're an EDM fan, you know where you're going. Yeah. And it's not like that here.
No. Last weekend or a couple weekends ago, it was sold out Easy Baked at Ogden, sold out Caspa, Hamdi, Sicaria at Serves.
And they're debatably in that same circle.
Yeah.
And it's all sold out.
Yeah.
It
was, I was like, wow, good job, Denver. But no, I totally agree. And it's one of the riskiest markets to throw a show into or a headline or whatnot because of that too.
You've done a headline at Serves, right?
Yeah, so I did my first headline
not too long ago.
June 8th.
Okay,
in a ballroom, and it was amazing. And we had a whole kind of AV concept that we tied with the headline, and it was very much a journey, I'd say. It wasn't just like, okay, here's a veil set, boom. It was I had which recently came out on my Surveillance EP, but crafted 4 tracks that all had essentially custom AI samples that I generated through a story I wrote that I then it became a story. Tracks. So the set was then broken up of like those 4 tracks kind of outlining the story and then filling in the gaps, you know, in between with a lot of my other music and other vibes that kind of fit in that. But it was very much an AV set. We had every track. That's actually one time where I did have to plan every track.
Coding.
And that was super stressful for me. But my VJ was able to have, you know, before the set for each song, he had been able to pair a visual element that went along with the story.
Yeah.
So and he's pushing me every day. Like, this is what we're doing moving forward. And I'm like, don't make me like, don't.
That's so good though. I think I definitely have people who kind of do that in certain divisions, like certain aspects. Man, I'm someone that I work really good for other people, but sometimes it's hard for me to work really good for me, which is something that you have to do in like this. I have to say, okay, you're not clocking in for Lizzy Scott, you're clocking in for Lizzy Jane, she's your boss, and like keep it moving forward. Like commit, finish, done, pitch, move on, let it go.
Yeah.
Like, because I think it's really easy as an artist to overthink things or think about a million different ways you can approach things and not just like commit and say, this is what I'm doing. I don't give a fuck about what anybody else thinks. And just to have one person who's like, go to it, like keep going kind of deal, I think is really lovely. And yeah, I was listening to that EP on the way over and it sounds like, I mean, it starts like a movie would start almost like if you were listening to a movie with like the TV off kind of deal with the acapella and, or not the acapella, but like dialogue moving back and forth. So those were all like AI generated.
Yeah.
Love
So
that.
the main character Ozzel is actually my roommate. Because I wanted her voice to be more humanized. So I just like recorded her talking and I pitched it up a little bit. And then the AI, there's like 3 different AI characters that go throughout the songs. And I like, wrote it up. I have AI kind of like say it out loud and then I can bounce those to samples. So that was really fun and a little harder than you would think, just getting everything to be the right tempo, the right voice, and I wanted like each of the AI, like one of them, the server boss, like I knew he needed to be like really low, a lot of sub and whatnot versus like the friendly AI that was kind of helping Ozzel through the server. Like she's a little more like, cheery and I'm here to help you and whatnot. So that it was fun. It was a fun process and I'm going to continue to do that with sampling. I really liked that of being able to kind of create what I want things to say, which I've done up to this point mostly with my own voice. And I either pitch it like high enough or low enough to where you can't tell it's me because I don't have a singing voice or even a speaking voice for the songs. But with the AI, I've been able to be like, okay, I want a British man for this one, or I want a, whatever it is and find, and then have them say it. I can pick how fast and slow kind of, it's really nice. It's easier than me being like saying things on, saying it and then pitching it up and then it's too long and you know the whole drill. So it's been a fun process to dive into and I'm sure I'm going to keep kind of getting deeper into that. So
I feel like that's how, I get the AI conversation. I get the AI stigma. I totally understand like the quote unquote like threat, but I also think it could be an aid for a lot of things, especially in production. And, I think that's a great example of how to use AI to not be going on Splice and saying dark, creepy, scary vocal from a horror movie, help me. And then you hear 20 other songs from the same acapella. And I just think in the long term, they can replicate what's already been done. But maybe it'll be in our lifetime, but I will find it very interesting to obviously see the rollout of it in the next decade. And I feel very confident that it's only going to be able to replicate what has already been put out into the world. It's going to be hard to create something that they don't have a database of something to pull from. And I think in our lane, it's going to force people to be innovative. It's going to force people to be more creative. And I think the fans are ready for that. I think consumers are ready for that. I think people who maybe haven't gone into we live in such like a niche world where we can kind of like lose ourselves and we know about all these different subgenres and all these different events and all these different sides to electronic music. But I would say most of the average consumers, go to their average festival and there it is. And they're hearing the same acts that sound the same, or you got one act that's playing their same live show 6 years later. I don't know if there's going to be like really like a window for that. And maybe 10 years from now, maybe it'll really force people to just like think next level. And I think fans are like going to be like, let's go. Cool, sweet, we're ready kind of deal.
Yeah. Well, it comes back to like, I always think about it with a human attention span. Like I don't have the exact like fact in front of me, but it was generally the fact was around the year 2000, human attention spans were 17 minutes. Now we're down in 2023.
I don't want to know this.
it's 7 seconds.
Yeah.
And if you think about when you look at stories,
TikTok.
it's like a 15-second story. How many times do you click through the story before the 15 seconds is over? Almost every time, because we don't have the attention span. So if you apply that to what you were just saying in regards to like fans, it's like, how do we keep their attention for longer than 7 seconds on the internet, on a stage, wherever it may be. And that can be applied to, any business model, not just music, but it is going to continue to be like, it's continually important to keep innovating when we can as these AI things get integrated. And I do lessons with someone named Ben and Canty, and have for a while. He's an old friend of mine. He has the Zebler and Canty experience.
I was literally in my head, I'm like, in Connie and Canty.
Yeah.
I was like, I can see it in my head, and that's what it is. The Zebler and Conty.
So he does like these. He lives in Scotland, and he does these beat retreats. And he's a full-time Ableton certified producer. He's been working for Ableton for 18 years. So the man's like really knows his shit.
Yeah.
Every
little crevice of Ableton.
It's insane how much he's just improved, like helped me improve my workflow. Like just little like, oh, this button, that button, this button, like little things that have saved me so much time outside of all the sound design techniques and things I'm learning. But he showed me something a few weeks ago that he's working on with Mr. Bill.
I was literally, every time somebody says certified Ableton instructor, I go, Mr. Bill.
Mr. Bill, exactly. So him and Mr. Bill, and I'm sure I know he's posted about it, so I'm sure he's fine talking about it. But it's like a little plugin that goes into Ableton, and you can direct it to any folder. So he showed me an example where he directed it to like a rhythm bass folder, and then generate samples. Boom! It's like a chat GBT for Ableton. It then spits out like 100 custom samples that are referenced from the reference folder. So if you were to give it the plugin like classical music, it would generate classical music samples. So it's like it's what you said before. It's like generating. It has to have a database to generate from, right? And it's terrifying. Like, and a lot of them are just like so crazy. Like he was clicking through them. I'm like, oh my god, like they're really gnarly bass sounds, and it's terrifying to think like that an AI just created this when like I could spend like all afternoon and probably not make this sound.
I mean, how many producers have you talked to that said for the better half of the last decade, they have 2 sound design days a week where they clock in and they're working on sounds in one key for 8 fucking hours?
Yeah.
Or, the virtual riots and like the funk cases of the world. And probably even Mr. Bill, and I'm sure your instructor was around then when you didn't have Serum and you didn't have anything, and you're creating kicks from synthesis, and you're creating, just shit that like I don't even want to know how to do.
Yeah.
Like I have no aspiration to take a sine wave and say, I'm going to sit here with ADSR and make it turn into a kick in the next 2 hours and I'm going to love it. And it is terrifying, but I feel like, I don't know. It's a crapshoot. It could go one way or another. I don't think anybody can really predict what AI is eventually going to do. But I think for now, as like a producer, you just have to stay up to current events and trends and use it as an aid to make your workflow more efficient. Because then what happens when you save 8 hours on sound design and you get all the sounds you want in 5 minutes, and then you can work on something else for your project. And then you can, maybe focus on the musicality aspect, or you go and you learn something totally new that you can, do. I just like anything, like cell phones, internet, there's going to be a lot of good and there's going to be a shit ton of bad.
Yeah.
Like it's not going to be one way or the other.
Yeah. And that's like my general take on AI is I'm like here for AI in general.
Mm-hmm.
But I think in regards to art, it terrifies me. It's like this, like the Mid-Journey paintings.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, I'm sure the painters felt how I felt when I saw that Ableton plugin. It's like, this is terrifying.
Digital art.
Yeah. This Mid-Journey just made this, piece like that in 4 minutes when it could take years. Take someone years. So I think that for art, it's going to have more serious implications. But I think in general, I'm like, I want, like, even my house, I walk in, I'm like, turn the lights on, lights go on. Like, I love the tech forward elements that it brings. Even like when I'm naming songs now, sometimes I'll go into ChatGPT like for around surveillance, and I was like, write a love story about this woman locked in a server and she's in love with a robot. And like I had the ChatGPT, and I was like, make it 6 paragraphs. So it was like super long. And then I took little phrases from that and turned those into samples. So it was like just generating like ideas that like, cool, I could have maybe written a love letter to a robot, but it wouldn't have been nearly as good as the ChatGPT was. And so just using it for inspiration.
Using it for inspiration and I just feel like everybody thought AI. I remember when we were kids and they said by now we would have flying cars and we'd be like traveling above the skyline and like getting to places. And I just think that the way that AI is being rolled out, I don't think anybody thought it would come for artists first. I think a lot of people thought it would be exactly what you said, more tech savvy, maybe more in business models, maybe,
Neuralink stuff.
Yes. Yeah. Like I'm going to do whatever in my head.
My notifications.
Yes. Yeah. Without me like talking to you and you can't see anything and I'm here reading a book kind of deal.
Yeah.
But you saw it in LA with the strike. You saw it among the writers. You saw it among the actors. I mean, there's people like Joe Rogan that you see show up in ads that he's never done where they use his voice. And this is, Shark Tank ads, shit like that.
Yeah.
And it's here, it's definitely going to be one of those things where we'll just have to see how it rolls out. Roll with the punches. Okay. So what's next for the Veil project? Do you have any shows coming up that you're excited for? Do you have any? You're on big tour.
Yeah. So I just finished the BTSM tour. It was like spread out through a couple months.
Are you on Red Rocks?
I am on Red Rocks next Sunday. So I have been trying not to freak out every day about it.
Crazy fucking ride because is it this Sunday?
Next Sunday.
Next Sunday. Yeah. Because it's literally Blackfire Sex Machine and then Wakan.
G Jones this weekend.
Yeah, G Jones this weekend before that.
Pretty much my biggest inspiration.
But like all of my friends, it's literally like you and then my friend Ruvlo is playing. And then I think Drink Your Water, Kevin's on the next day. And then I play the next day. And then there's somebody else who comes in and plays that Friday. And then Mark Rebelay is like on that Thursday. It's a crazy week.
Oh, that's amazing. So we're both
really
Red Rocks girlies.
Yes, we are.
I love that.
You've played it before, right?
I played in April with Subtronics.
Any little tips, I guess? Like anything that you were like, wow, I didn't expect it to be like this?
Well, Subtronics Rocks turned into Snow Rocks. It was 30 degrees.
I remember
snowing sideways for my whole set. And this was the most unexpected thing for me was that, but what that led to was they had to end the show early because they wanted people to get down before things froze.
Got it.
And so then sets got pushed up and also shortened.
Okay.
So that was another.
Now you get like a real opportunity.
Yeah. Like it was very like the whole day I was like, I hope it doesn't get canceled was kind of the vibe. And I'm just happy to be here. And
yes,
I don't care that it's snowing. I was not cold at all up there. I was really like just warm from nerves and adrenaline, but having like the shorter set definitely and finding out right before I played affected because I had to figure out like, okay, what 15 minutes am I cutting? And my thesis was I'm going to cut like a little bit from each section, but keep all the sections.
Yes.
But that then like changed a lot of the, like, so I do a lot of BPM jumps in my sets, right? So I have a few like moments that like there's some songs that I can't not play because I'm like I want to get from 140 to 160 and this is there's 2 150s I can choose from. This one doesn't mix, so here it is right now. So it's like those moments were really hard on stage, and that was the first time ever. My headline was the second that I had planned the set start to finish with my VJ.
Yes.
So
it was last minute hours
planning these things, and then he went up there not knowing which songs I was cutting, not knowing then he's trying to fit an hour worth of visual content in 45 minutes. So that was like, it was a negative, but overall the experience was incredible. And I'm grateful that the show went on that night.
You're playing 2 times. You're playing Red Rocks 2 times within a season, which very few acts get to do.
I know. It's very surreal. I think I'm less nervous this time because like I've already got that under my belt. I know what to expect more, like you said, but I definitely have the equal, if not more, of the pressure leading up to it, which I'm sure you know the feeling of. But like,
I think I started getting nightmares in like the beginning of September, and I'm like, okay, we have merch. We know we're pressing the merch. I have my meetings with my VJ. I have my live act rehearsing with me. I'm like, okay, it's like we're doing the things we need to do, and now I just need to like finish my set, plan my outfits all a week in advance, be done, and no touching, no fluctuating, no maybe this, maybe that, no, done, and then you just get to enjoy it.
I love that. I'm gonna take that advice and maybe plan my outfit a little earlier than for the first
running,
Red Rocks.
especially having like the full accessibility of living here. Not good.
Yeah. No, in April, it was the first time that I bought a outfit. I bought it on Etsy from Bulgaria to wear for Red Rocks, and I was like, okay, this is my Red Rocks outfit. And silly me, I'm like, it'll be warm in April, and it was like shorts and a tank top.
Yeah,
and didn't get to, obviously didn't get to wear it. So that morning, I was literally like, what do I wear? And like that, when you're having those really high stress situations, those decisions, which are normally easy, become like way harder.
Yeah.
So that's good advice. I'll plan my outfit in advance again.
You put it away. You say, I'm not looking at it until the day of. You put it on.
Yeah.
Done.
I love that. All right. That's on my to-do list next week.
Absolutely. And so what's coming up in the future?
So I have Red Rocks next weekend and then Halloween right after that.
Oh, so excited.
Yeah, which I'm very excited to be going back there. And then in November, I'm on Immersive Tour for 8 dates.
Love.
Yeah. And then I get the whole month of December off, which
you're like, thank God.
Very happy about. Which I'll do like I just became an aunt and whatnot. So I will still be busy and traveling in December. I go see my niece and whatnot. But it'll be a nice little break after November tour. I'll be doing the tour bus thing for 2 weeks. So
yes.
It's very fun, but it's tiring.
Like, thank God.
Yeah. I love the bus when I did it with Liquid Stranger because you don't have to go to airports.
That's my thing.
And I'm never alone.
I'm willing to make the sacrifice if I don't have to deal with fucking airport. I can just go to sleep. Maybe it's a little bumpy, whatever, take an edible. You wake up the next day, you're in a new city, and then you actually have like time to see the city.
Yeah,
like
or
which is
work
so
on music,
dope.
or get a pedicure. Like you get this extra time.
With traveling, you're like, here, how early can I get there? Okay, now we're paying for the Uber. Okay, now we're Ubering dinner. Food. I need to sleep anyways. And then you wake up at 9 p.m. and you're like, I'm off to the club, and then I'm off to the airport. Here we go.
Yeah, so I'm taking it with. I'm excited to get back on the bus, which I am. But I think once I get on for like a week and a half, you're like, oh, I wish this was longer. That's only like Liquid. I was on the bus for 2 months and I was terrified before I got on.
That's a long.
And then I was like, and I went home like once in between that to see my animals, but when I got off, I was like, I don't ever want to get off. So I'm sure it'll be the same with this. And then some exciting tour things shaping up for next year. So we'll see. But I can't believe it's almost the end of the year.
I know, doesn't it go fast? Yeah. I feel like even up here with seasons, I feel like it goes faster. Because in Florida, you're like hot and humid all the time. Yeah. And then here, you're like, oh, the leaves are changing. Oh, it's snowboard season. Oh, it's getting warmer. Oh, it's summer. Like, let's go out. Like, It's cool.
It's fun.
Thank you so much for coming on. I'm so glad we got to do this, and congratulations on everything.
Thank you.
Enjoy it all.
Yeah, I appreciate you. I love what you're doing with this project and showcasing, a variety of different artists that deserve it. So I'm blessed to be here, and let's crush Red Rocks next week.
Thank you. Bye, guys.
Bye.